Most of the Filipino people spend their money on food enabled for them to survive in their everyday lives, while some of their budgets are being spent on any goods, products, and services. But what if the prices and costs of these products suddenly arises? Now this is where inflation comes into action.
Inflation is a general and ongoing rise in the level of prices in the entire economy. Inflation does not refer to a change in relative prices. A relative price change occurs when you see that the price of the tuition has risen and the price of laptop has fallen. Inflation, on the other hand, means that there is pressure for prices to rise in the most markets in the economy. In addition, price increase in the supply and demand model were one-time events, representing a shift from a previous equilibrium to a new one. Inflation implies an ongoing rise in prices. Inflation happened for 1 year and then stop, then it would not be inflation anymore.
The effect of inflation and interest rate on economic growth is quite a serious problem. Experiences on inflation is no longer the problem, but the fact that the inflation problem seems to have reached the crisis dimension. Changes in interest rate determines the rate of inflation. Thus, inflation led to several problems such as in financing, budgeting, and planning. Truly, that this affects the management of the product consumers and producer and management of the Filipino family and worker and macroeconomic of the country as a whole.
The effects of inflation are visible to the product consumers and producers. With rising prices, consumer may be more inclined to try and purchase more quickly before price rise further. With rising prices, it can create more confusion over which prices are good value. It could lead to cost and consumer looking around different shops comparing prices. To know the status of some consumers, John Michael had an interview with one eatery owner along the highway of Bongabo.
Familiar po ba kayo sa inflation?
Hindi masyadong, hindi gaanong pamilyar sa akin.
Paano po kayo nakakaranas ng inflation sa panahon ng pandemya?
Sa mga bilihin tulad ng ginagamit naming karne, dati mas mataas siya ngayon kaysa sa dun sa dati. Dati 200, ngayon naging 220.
Naapektuhan po ba ang pagpapasahod ninyo dahil sa pandemya?
Hindi naman gaano. Yun pa rin, parehas lang pa rin yung pasahod namin noon at saka yun ngayon.
According to Ms. Finia, she is not that familiar with inflation. However, she is aware that the price of the product she needs for her business, particularly the meat, increases. Nonetheless, in regard with the salary of her workers, the salary remains stable regardless of the increase of the product prices. Ms. Finia's side is the effect of inflation to the consumers. They do not have their own supply of meat, hence they buy from someone who has, which are the producers. Now, what are the effects of inflation to producers of the product? To know the status of the producers, Jobet had an interview with one of the meat seller in the public market.
Familiar po ba kayo sa inflation?
Ang inflation ay yung pagtaas ng mga bilihin.
Paano naman po dyan ang kapag yung pamumuhay?
Siyempre, kapag mataas ang presyo ng product na aming tinitinda, mahal din yung tinda namin. Siyempre, yung ibang mga mamimili na walang pambili, hindi makakabili ng gano'n na dati. Mura pa, diba?
Kung sa presyo naman po ng mga paninda niyo po, meron po bang bagong pagtaas po nila?
Meron, pagbabago. Dati, mura. Ngayon, ano na. Kasi ang mahal din ng aming buha sa mga baboy, manok. Nagtaas din ang manok. Baboy, mga hotdog, nagtataas din. Halos lahat nagtaas.
According to Miss Ann, she is familiar with inflation. She said that inflation is the increase of price of certain product. She added that if the price of the product they produce is high, they also sell it into an expensive price. In regards with her products, she increased the price of meat such as chicken, beef, pork, and even the processed food.
Both of the interviews shows that the prices of the products increases. The first interview, which is in the eatery, represents as the consumer, and the second interview, which is in the public market, or in particular, the seller of meat in the public market, shows or represent as the producer. It is noticeable that if the prices of the producer product rises or increases, the prices of the consumer products increases as well.
Because of these circumstances, the daily living of Filipino people and workers are being affected by means of spending their money out of their budget. And because of this, they are lacking their money to buy other expenses.
It could be argued that the effect of inflation to Filipino families and workers tends to exaggerate the impact of inflation because households are able to substitute between various food items and also substitute other goods with food. However, there are no close substitutes to food, and substitution between food items is also limited among the poor because they have limited option to reduce the quality of food while maintaining the nutrient contents. Even if those estimates exaggerate the true change in poverty, poor agricultural households, especially those who derive incomes by agricultural wages, are particularly vulnerable to food inflation.
Poor Filipinos struggling to pay water and electricity bills now have more problems to worry about as food prices jump amid the coronavirus crisis. The uptick in food inflation comes as economy struggles to come out of recession due to the pandemic, leaving millions with no jobs, and utility companies and landlords start collecting deferred payments from last year. According to Rappler, food even more expensive, pushing inflation 4.2% in January 2021. Here is the report.
Other than the COVID-19 crisis and unemployment, Filipinos now have to worry about the soaring prices of food. The Philippine Statistics Authority reports Friday, February 5, inflation surged to 4.2% in January 2021. The latest figure is higher than the 3.5% recorded in December 2020 and the 2.9% posted in January 2020. Food and non-alcoholic beverages push inflation up in January. Meat, for example, posts a 17.1% inflation, 21.2% for vegetables, and 9% for fruits. National statistician Dennis Mapa says pure meat pork in Metro Manila went as high as 77% and up to 45% in areas outside the National Capital Region. Transportation costs also continue to rise, posting an 8.6% inflation rate. Inflation in Metro Manila stands at 4.3% higher than the national average, mainly due to higher food prices. The uptick in food inflation comes as the economy struggles to come out of recession due to the pandemic. President Rodrigo Duterte earlier heeded the call of the Agriculture Department to cap prices of pork and chicken for 60 days, with the blame going to unscrupulous traders for allegedly jacking up prices. The government's economic team expects inflation to settle within the 2% to 4% target this year. Meantime, persons with comorbidities are now included in the priority groups for COVID-19 vaccination in the Philippines, trailing behind health workers and senior citizens. Presidential spokesman Harry Roque announces this Friday, February 5. The World Health Organization identifies persons with comorbidities as those with heart or lung disease, diabetes, or conditions affecting their immune system. In other news, the government is now requiring all passengers of vehicles to wear face masks even if they are from the same household. The driver may only remove their face mask when they are traveling alone. The Transportation Department and Health Department issue these new guidelines Friday, February 5.
Therefore, the Philippine Statistics Authority (PSA) releases inflation data every first week of the month for the public to be aware of just how much prices have changed compared to a year ago. Statisticians and experts measures inflation by looking at a basket of goods which contain what the typical Filipino consumes on a regular basis.
The headline inflation at the national level accelerated further to 4.7% in February 2021 from 4.2% in January 2021. This is the highest inflation posted since January 2019. Inflation in February 2020 stood at 2.6%. The uptrend in country's inflation was mainly brought about the uptick in the inflation of the heavily weighted food and non-alcoholic beverages at 6.7% during the month, from 6.1% in January 2021.
Since there is a rise in the price of goods and services, the purchasing power of money declines. This in turn reduces financial wealth and lowers living standards. Greater uncertainty surrounds long-run plan. In the Philippine context, at least, inflation is still regarded as a clear and present danger to macroeconomic stability. However, a forward view of the Philippine economy leaves one with qualified but hopeful possibilities. Thus, the macroeconomic fundamentals could be immensely strengthened through the pursuit of economic reforms that have eluded change in the past. From the government sector, fiscal sector reforms are basic to improvement of the national saving rate. However, failing to get the reforms done properly contributes to the resistance to the economy's smooth forward direction.
Inflation can impose a real cost on society in terms of efficiency with which the exchange mechanism works by distorting the incentives to save, invest, and work, and by providing incorrect signals that needlessly alter production and work effort. Because of this, policymakers should be concerned with the ongoing rate of inflation and any tendency for it to accelerate. Thus, it is important for the government to always be aware about the macroeconomics problems such as disinflation, for it will truly disrupt the economic growth if not given solution. Most importantly, enriching the country through economic growth is the best option to make the local a better country.